subject, and then I heard one that a friend of mine wrote, and I decided I didn't think I could top this, so with his permission, I recited this one. His name is Joel Nelson, and he actually had a poetry album some years ago called The Breaker in the Pen, and it was nominated for a Grammy Award in the spoken word category, and he lost to Hillary Clinton reading a children's book. What? But this is called The Prized Possession. What's the last thing you part with? I once asked a cowboy pal, expecting him to tell me why that horse in your corral. Maybe his brand new saddle worked for years to get, or possibly his granddad's spurs, silver inlaid bit. 100 things went through my mind, from boots to cold hard cash. But the thing he promptly answered was this handlebar mustache. Took 35 long years to see to finally get her growth. No, it's vain. I kind of like this old mustachio. And there's hundreds out there like him on the western cattle range that cultivate this facial hair, and it ain't about to change. Oh, the things can be a nuisance when the wintertime rolls in. You got two great big chunks of ice weighing past your chin. And in a while, your cold red nose will start to run and dribble. Before you get your mittens off, that freezes in the middle. Your napkin gets a workout with an immediate soup or stew, and it sometimes gets discolored with tobacco if you chew. Then there's a long recovery time when it sings by a branding fire, or a maddened wife with a vice-like grips that demonstrate her eye. Now say you're shoeing horses and your bronc sets up a clamor, and one handlebar gets caught to its falls on the downstroke of your hammer. Now that the trials and tribulations of a man with a mustache are just the dues you have to pay to possess that beautiful dash. To look to receive the looks of wandering off from a kid with a peach fuzz lip or little babies that don't control themselves reaching the hope. But you know that it's all worth it, and you feel that you've come far when you see that dashing buckaroo in the mirror where you are. Oh, at times you might hear whispers, and them out of range will make cracks, but straighten up, pull out your tube, and add a little wax. Prized Possession by Joel Nelson.
Our daughter was waitressing one night, and we came in, and the people in the kitchen, she went in, and they were talking about Jeff's mustache, and she just laughed, and she goes, "That's my dad." And then we left, and another friend of ours came in, and his was waxed, and he twisted it, and it was real long, and he went in the kitchen. She went back in the kitchen, and she said, "Did you see that mustache?" And they go, "Yeah." And she goes, "I've known him all my life." And they looked at her, and they go, "Molly, you're going to marry a man with a mustache."
But she did. Years and years ago, I showed up at one of the very first ever cowboy get-togethers I've ever been to. I've been singing cowboy songs since I was a kid. But when I first showed up, I was going to be on stage in this show, and I was backstage, and the guy that was singing it was in a wheelchair, sitting out there singing it. His name is Buck Ramsey. Buck Ramsey rode what they called the rough string back in the old days when ranches had rough string. It was a horse that clawed, kicked, and bit, and bucked, and nobody wanted to ride him. And the toughest, roughest, youngest guy that, thought he was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, they'd give him the string of horses that nobody else could ride. He rode the rough string. He was tough. And one of them rolled back over on top of him when he was in his early 30s, I think, and broke his back. And the rest of his life, he rode a wheelchair. But he became an encyclopedia of Western verse, poetry, music, literature, and things like that. And he was an amazing mind. And he was real good to a bunch of younger guys like me at the time that just loved everything about the cowboy and wanted to sing cowboy songs and learn cowboy poems and read cowboy stories. He was singing this song, and I had heard it before, but I didn't know anything about it. And he was singing it. And so when he came off the stage, I was talking to him, and I asked him, I said, "Will you teach me that song? I want to learn that song." And he said, "All right." So he said, "Sit down and get your guitar." So he taught me basically, it was a pretty basic song, but he taught me the song. And we sang through it a couple of times so I could remember the words. Then he said, "Okay, now here's the deal." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "From now on, whoever gets on stage first gets to sing it." And so, because it's kind of like those cowboy deals, sometimes it's kind of like a table full of cowboys at the cafe. The first liar in that bunch has got no chance whatsoever. It's just one up in everybody. But, so we used to kind of make that a joke. And if I was singing first, I'd say, "This is for Buck Ramsey," and I'd sing it. And then he'd come out and go, "Jeff sang all my songs, so I got to figure out what I'm going to sing." He was a really good guy. So he's passed on now. So every time I sing this, I think of Buck Ramsey. In the lobby of a big hotel, New York town one day, a bunch of fellas selling yarn, passed the time away. They talked of all the things they've done, the different sights they've seen. Some of them great Chicago town and New Orleans. In the corner in a big armchair was a man whose hair was gray. He sat listening eagerly to what they had to say. When they asked him where he'd like to be, his dear old voice did ring. "I'd like to be in Texas for the roundup in the spring. 'Cause I can see the cattle grazing on the hills of Burlington, Lord, I can see the campfire smoke and the breaking of dawn. I can hear the broncos neigh, I can hear the cowboys sing. Oh, I'd love to be in Texas for the roundup in the spring." Well, they all sat there listening to every word he had to say. They knew the old man sitting there once been young and gay. When they asked him to tell a story about his life out on the plain, he quietly removed his hat, softly began. "I've seen them stampede on the hills. Do you think they never stop? I've seen them run for miles and miles till their leaders drop. I was foreman on a cattle ranch. That's the calling of the king. And I'd like to be back in Texas, boys, when they're out in the spring. 'Cause I can see the cattle grazing on the hills of early morn. I can see the campfire smoke breaking up the dawn. I can hear the coyotes yell, and I can hear the cowboys sing. Oh, I'd like to be in Texas for the roundup in the spring. There's a place in sunny Texas where Molly Denny sleeps. There's a grove of mossy live oaks, her constant vigil keeps. And in my mind's a recollection of the long gone bygone days, where we rode the range together like two skillet kids at play. I hear her sweet voice call me in the watches of the night. I can hear her laughter fresh in me, years of early life. I was foreman on a cow ranch, that's the calling of a king. And I'd like to be in Texas for the roundup in the spring. 'Cause I can see the cattle grazing on the hills of early morn. I can see the campfire smoke breaking of the dawn. I can hear the broncos neigh, I can hear the cowboys sing. Oh, I'd like to be in Texas for the roundup in the spring. I was born on the cattle ranch, that's the calling of a king. And I'd like to be in Texas for the roundup in the spring. There was no cowboy named Tom Blasingame, and he worked for the J.A. Ranch in the Palo Verde Canyon in the Texas Panhandle for 70-something of his 90 years. And he worked there out in Booties, out on the bottom, down by the Colorado River that runs through that Palo Verde Canyon, in a little shack down on the bottom of that canyon. And for the longest time, he had coal oil lamps and wood-burning stove, no hot and cold running water. His wife lived in Claude, Texas, and Clarendon, Texas, at different times. They're little bitty towns. I mean, they're little bitty towns, but they were too big for him to live in town, so he lived out at the ranch. And he just went home every once in a while. But he lived in such rough surroundings and so primitive. He's the only one that lived down there in that part of the canyon. And even though he was 91 years old, every year when they bring the 2-year-olds out for people to take a couple of new 2-year-olds into their spring to start these colts, he still took colts like everybody else was starting colts at 91 years old. And the day after Christmas, when he was 91 years old, I think it was 1989, he went out early one morning, he was trotting a horse around, he had a little sandy spot down there by the river, and he trotted those horses around in a circle out there on that sandy spot. He'd go check waters, and he'd come back to the cabin. And either on his way or on his way back, there's a little tree right there by the sandy spot. He got tired or he got feeling bad or something, and he got off his horse and he laid down under that tree with his hat over his eyes and arms over his chest and fell asleep, and that's where he died right there on that spot. 91 years old. And this was a 2-year-old bronc. He was starting, but it was ground time about 10 feet away from him, sitting there just eating grass, waiting on him. Never left him a foot, but stayed right there. And they found him there that day. But anyway, he when he died, they boarded up that old Campbell Creek camp house because nobody would live down there anymore. It was just kind of went to decay after that. So anyway, I wrote this song about him. It's called The Old Man. There was once a light in the window, shines no more. No one tried to hurt on the cabin floor. Where there once was a blanket, there's boards across the door, 'cause the old man ain't got a bronco anymore. No cowboys die shed old man ain't riding bronco anymore. No, the old man ain't riding bronco anymore. We spent a bunch of the summer up in Idaho, southern Idaho, and there's a portion of that country up there that's part of Idaho, part of Oregon, part of Northern California, and Nevada that's called the Great Basin. It's a great big huge, during the flood, others would say something different, but we all know the flood really happened. And at one time that was all covered in water, so they find shellfish and stuff all in that basin up there. It was once a big, high altitude, but a big basin, way high altitude, where water settled for a long time up in that higher altitude place. And so the forage up there and everything could only be there because at one time it was full of water. It was like an ocean type place. But that came from when the flood was receding, it left water in there for a long time. And that basin, and there's mountains there, and there's valleys, and there's canyons, and there's big lakes, and there's all kinds of things up there that are indicative of that type of a high desert region. But the heart of that, right in the center of that, is a place called the Owyhee, and mostly that's in Idaho and part of Nevada, and that's like the center of that place. And the reason it's called the Owyhee is really, really strange because years and years ago, like 1850s, there were some Hawaiians, no joke, there were some Hawaiians that went up there to herd sheep and to trap. They were trappers for the Northwest Trading Company that was a competitor to the Hudson Bay Trading Company. They sent all those mountain men out there to get beaver and all that kind of stuff in the wild. They went out there, they got all their supplies and everything, and everybody's like, these guys are from Hawaii, they're crazy, what are they doing? They go out there and they either froze to death or the Indians got them or something because they were never seen or heard from again.
Oh my.
But they didn't know how to say Hawaii or how to spell it, so they spelled it O-W-Y-H-E-E, Owyhee. And so it's the Owyhee region. That's what it's called. But that part of the country up there, they took the influence of cowboying and the vaqueros as it went through California. All right, the vaquero that came up through Central America and Mexico that became what is now the North American cowboy kind of split. It went up through Texas and that part of the world, and then it also went over into California. California predates a lot of even the earliest settlements in Texas. There were already huge estancias and even cities in California because of the shipping trade that came over there. And so those ranches over there are huge, and some of them are old Spanish landowners. They actually were given to them by Spain, dignitaries and royalty that moved over here and took over those places. And the horsemanship there is long and slow and methodical, and they take a horse over a period of years from a hackamore bosal on their nose to what they call a two-rein, where they have a smaller bosal, bosalita, on their nose that basically is the reins for a while, and they have a spade bit in their mouth that's only there for the weight and only there to teach them how to hold that in their mouth. And they're really not pulling on the reins a bit very much, and they slowly over time go from the reins of the McCarty or the Macate on the bosal. They loosen up on it and tighten up more on the rawhide reins that are on the spade bit, to the point that horse is in a full bridle, hauling straight from the bridle. And some people see those spade bits and they look extremely harsh, and they look medieval, some of them, but they're meant to be used very delicately. Only a real horseman can use a spade bit because they're meant to just lightly rest. Again, they're not meant to hit that horse's palate, and they're not meant to push against his palate. They're meant to touch that whole palate. If you look at them, there's a big spoon on there, and they're made to be shaped just like the upper roof of that horse's mouth, so it touches him. And when they were training those old horsemen back in the old days, they would put a silk line, silk string, in the place of rein chains between the bit and the reins. And if they pulled hard enough to break that silk string, they were pulling too hard. And that's how they taught them to be light-handed with horses, very light. And you see those guys, and there was romels and reins, and they're riding a horse like this. They're not holding the reins like this, they're holding like that. And they're just really light-handed with them. And that part of the world up there of tease with those guys a little bit about their flat hats and their crazy, everything they own rattles and jingles, you know, everything they own, their rattles. And they dress like old-timey guys, you know, and they look like a Charles Russell painting. That's all kind of cool anyway. I don't tell them how to really is. And they tease us about our taco hats down here and our stovepipe pants and our tall boots and rough out saddles and things like that. But I've gotten to where I love that country up there, and that country really will get under your skin in a lot of ways if you really love cowboy. And so I wrote this song, one of a couple of songs I wrote for my buddies up there. Facebook has been a great thing because you get thousands of friends from all over the world that you never meet, but I've ended up getting hundreds of buckaroo. They call themselves buckaroos, which comes from the word vaquero, actually. And they like to be called buckaroo, not cowboy. And so those buckaroos up there, they kind of like some of my songs because I sing about them in a kind way. I don't give them a hard time with my songs too much. But anyway, I wrote this about that country and Iowa. Yesterday we rode out on the desert, driving cattle up to summer rain. The sunlight on my skin and the wind in my face proved to me once again some things never change. They say home is where your heart is, Texas is my home. Goodbye is the hardest thing I know. So I'll leave a piece of my heart here, and no matter where I'm going, I'll make Idaho my home away from home. Tomorrow comes another time of leaving. You know how they say goodbye. I can't stand to see the look in your eye. So I'll be gone before you even rise. They say home is where your heart is, Texas is my home. Goodbye is the hardest thing I know. So I'll leave a piece of my heart here, and no matter where I'm going, I'll make Idaho my home away from home. There's something about a place called Hawaii keeps me from feeling lonely, even when I'm all alone. 'Cause they say home is where your heart is, Texas is my home. Goodbye is the hardest thing I know. So I'll leave a piece of my heart here, and no matter where I go, I'll make Idaho my home away from home. I'll leave a piece of my heart here, and no matter where I go, I'll make Idaho my home away from home. I'll make Idaho my home away from home. When I was a young man, it's kind of a young man's game to stay out with the wagon for the big branding in the spring and the shipping in the fall. And I've been out there a couple of times recently, and I'm an old guy. I used to be the kid, and now I'm an old guy. But when I was young and just a few years ago, there's a ranch there in Texas, the Swenson Ranch. It's actually for sale. So if any of y'all have $49 million, I'd like to be your partner on that ranch. But the historic ranches in Texas are all of a sudden, most of them all for sale. They're just selling. And they sold the Wagoners. The guy who's buried in one of the Walmart areas bought it and owns the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know where they are now. They've been in St. Louis and everywhere else over the years. I don't know where they are. Wherever the Rams are. Now we own them. And Four Sixes Ranch is for sale. The Swenson Ranch is for sale. I'm glad that their sale a couple of weeks ago did not go through because it was been a nightmare who was buying it. And they decided not to buy it, which was a good thing. I said, yes. So I'm still hoping a cowboy of some kind at heart buys it and have lots of money. But I got to go out with the wagon, and they don't take the wagon out very much anymore at any of those ranches. It used to be they would take the wagon out to do the branding because it was easier to get the cowboys out of bed than it was to get them out there in the trucks from a long way from town in case they had a flat or something. It was just a lot more cost effective, and they keep the horses in a big remuda, sometimes 100 horses in a big remuda out in the track. You'd ride out early in the morning before dawn and bring the horses in a big remuda. And the old adage of jingling in the horses came from, back in the old days, they would put an old mare in the horses. And the old Western movies, the Black Stallion was in charge of the herd of horses. That's not even true. The stallions stay off to themselves, off in the woods somewhere. And the old mare is the one that runs that band of horses. She's in charge. And so they would get an old mare that was good and gentle, that was the top of the pecking order, and they would send her out with the remuda of horses with a bell wrapped around her neck. And early in the morning before dawn, you could hear her bell ringing wherever she was. And they would trot out there in the dark, and they would ride to that bell. And when they got out there to her, they would summon her in, and she would follow those two cowboys in. And they would trot in, and she would start trotting in with them to the wagon. And when the other horses heard that bell moving, they would follow that bell. And so that's where the term jingling in the horses came from. And even today, you go on those big old ranches, there's not even mares in those remudas. They don't ride mares. If they do, it's a guy that showed up on his own that day and he rides mares. Very few guys ride mares on those big ranches. They don't like them in there with a bunch of yelling.
You might tell them what you mean when you say big ranches.
I'm talking about they count the size of the ranch by sections, not acres. 640 acres in a section. And you're talking 20, 30, 50, 100 sections. And massive ranches. I mean, one of the ranches I'm talking about, they got a horse track where they keep the remuda that's 5 sections.
Oh my.
So 5 times 640, that's the track where they keep the horses while we eat and stay at the wagon. And then you're gathering 20 sections. Me and another guy in Idaho that I ride with quite a bit, John Bagley, a friend of mine, we a lot of times go gather a 15, 20 section pasture by ourselves, catching the remnants they left in the drive before what got away or whatever. Just a couple of us on 20 sections. So it's massive country. And the wagon, you come in and they put them in a rope corral. Sometimes it's just guys holding ropes between each other. They'll rope their horses out for the day and then they turn them out when they're not riding. But anyway, I was honored at one time, several years ago, to spend quite a bit of time, spring and fall, on the Swenson Ranch at their wagon. I've been on some other ranches at the wagon, but I wrote this for those guys. Those guys got to be good friends of mine. And I hope that whoever buys it leaves it alone and lets it run and just lets them keep having a ranch. But the day will come when there are no wagons and there are nobody else taking wagons out. But I will still be able to tell my grandkids that I went out with the wagon. And in the cowboy world, that's a big deal. Sitting by the wagon when the sun come up this morning, making eggs and coffee, biscuits and beans. Cookie strikes the bell and he reads the world warning. How the boys put food away, he's all I've ever seen. Soon you'll hear the sound of an jingling horse. We'll gather round a rope corral and listen for our name. Saddle up and ride out in single file together, feet in the stirrup and on the rein. driving's over, we'll gather around the back. We'll eat a fried steak dinner with more biscuits and beans. Then evening we'll sit around the back about the things we've done and the places we've seen. Lying in my bedroll at night, leaving heaven, see the moon shine and stars as they gleam. Night horses neighing and the cattle are born. Slip off to sleep and all night in my dream. Right out on the morning, the king of all men, sun on the rise and your face in the wind. Tall in the saddle, oh, reach the sound that matches your heart as you sleep. You shadow on the ground. Somewhere there's a crew of cowboys jingling in horses. Somewhere around the road corral they're listening for their day. One by the little wild single file is formed, kicking and a spur and he'll line out again. Right out on the morning, the king of all men, sun on the rise and your face in the wind. Tall in the saddle, hoof beats the sound that matches your heart as you see your shadow on the ground. Tall in the saddle, hoof beats the sound that matches your heart as you see your shadow on the ground. Also, what I was going to say was, not only do they not use mares anymore, but the bell is gone too. They really don't put a bell on a horse very much anymore. Some ranches maybe do that. They do in the high country some because it wards the bears off of the horses that are out grazing staked out or something. But they still call it jingling in the horses, which is kind of interesting. But it's a term they still use. There was a man years ago. I'm just going to do a couple things for you so y'all getting tired or sleepy. I'm going to let you go for too long. I don't want y'all to be up too late. We've got a long day tomorrow. But his name was Bruce Kiscadden. And Bruce Kiscadden was a cowboy in northern Arizona, southern Nevada. At the turn of the century, not the most recent one, that spoiled all my stories, but the old one, back when we used to be in the old century, I could say back at the turn of the century, everybody ever knew what I was talking about. They said turn of the century, these little kids were going, 2003? No. But back in the early part of the 1900s, he worked as a young man in and around Arizona and Nevada. And he was getting a little older, late 30s, early 40s back then, especially when horses bucked a whole lot. They were a lot bigger, lankier, rougher country, and you lived out in the weather. And it wasn't like you went home and slept in a nice warm bed every night and you rode good broke horses. It was rough. Cowboy was rough in those days, especially in Arizona and Nevada. And he was getting a little bit older, a little stove up, and the cattle market crashed. Before the stock market crashed in the late 20s, the cattle market just went to nothing. And so it was getting harder to find good cowboy jobs. It was getting harder for older men to start to find cowboy jobs. But they heard they were making movies in Hollywood, and they needed men that could ride horseback. And a bunch of cowboys during that time made their trek west, and they got jobs in the movies. And Bruce Kiscadden got work in the movies and silent films. He wrote a chariot in the original silent version of Ben-Hur, and he was actually one of the Keystone Cops at one time in the old silent movie. He did stunt work and cowboy work in all those old silent westerns and early talkie B westerns. And when he got older and he couldn't do that anymore, he became a bellhop in a little bitty hotel in Beverly Hills, California. And as an old man, as a bellhop, he would take his break, and in the break room he would go and he would write poetry about his life as a cowboy, as a young man. And later were discovered by the masses, but not the masses, but more than just at the time. They would put them on the back of the Livestock Weekly magazine, or the Union Stockyard Weekly, out of Southern California. Every week when it came out, it'd have one of his poems on there. And they published it in a book in 1947. He died in 1950 as a very old man. But over the years, considered the greatest classic old cowboy pork, or the originals. You know, there's a lot of people writing cowboy pork now, but that's where it kind of came from. It used to be just a shared thing around the campfire. It wasn't like a performance thing back then at all. But this is a poem by Bruce Kiskadden, and this is, I call this the Gone with the Wind of cowboy poetry. This is the classic cowboy poem. If you want to learn a cowboy poem, only one in your whole life, you learn this one. Though you're not exactly blue, you don't feel quite like you do in the winter or on the long, hot summer days. Your feelings and the weather seem to sort of go together. You're quiet and dreamy on the haze. When the last big steer is goaded up to shoot and safely loaded, and the summer crew sees to hit the ball, then you go to drag him to the home ranch with the wagon when they finish shipping cattle in the fall. There's only 2 men left standing on the job for winter. Brandon and his partner, he's loafing at your side. You hear his brand new saddle creaking, you never hear him speak. You feel it's going to be a quiet ride. Oh, you savvy one another. You know him like a brother. He's friendly. He's just quiet, that's all. For he's thinking as he's dragging to the home ranch with the wagon when they finish shipping cattle in the fall. You got the saddle horses stringing in an easy walk, swinging in behind the old chuck wagon, moving slow. They're weary, gant, jaded. They've settled down to business long ago. Back in the spring, not a horse is acting stormy, not a horse is feeling sporty. Back in the spring, them brutes are full of buck and ball. But now they're gentle as they're dragging to the home ranch with the wagon when they finish shipping cattle in the fall. The old cook leads a retreat, perched up high on his wagon seat with his old hat pulled down forward on his head. He used to make the old team hustle, now he barely moves a muscle. A fellow might imagine he's dead, except his old cop pipes are smoking. He keeps that team a-poking, hitting every hump and hollering the road. No, Cook ain't been drinking, he's just sitting there and thinking about the people and places that he's known. You see the clouds a-sailing and little dust a-trailing and a big mirage like lakes and timber tall. And it's lonesome when you drag them to the home ranch with the wagon when they finish shipping cattle in the fall. You build your camp that night, you got a fire burning bright, but nobody really has a lot to say. Back in the spring, you sun and hot, but now you get your supper slaughtered and you crawl into the blankets right away. You see the stars are shining in the soft blue light and you sniff the frosty night air clear and cool. You hear your night horse shift and then your memory starts to drift back to the little village where you went to school with its narrow gravel streets and the kids you used to meet in common where you used to play baseball. But now you're far away. Drag it to the home ranch with the wagon when they finish shipping cattle in the fall. Your schoolboy sweetheart, too. She had eyes of honest blue. Best performer in the hometown talent show. Well, you was only just a kid, but you liked her. Sure you did. Lord, it was over 30 years ago. Your mind begins to roam from old Mexico to known from Rio Grande to the Powder River. The things you've seen and done, some of them was lots of fun. Lots of other things made you shiver. Like that kid named Reed got killed at Stampede. So up north, we helped him dig his grave. Your good friend Jim, the boss, got hung up on his horse and the boys couldn't reach him time to save. He's there when Ed got his kid that killed him, still in prison. Lucky George, he's rich as living high. Poor Tom got off the worst. Got his legs broke, and he died of thirst. Must have been a horrible way to die. Winters at the ranches, springtime country dances, people there were sociable and gay. Used to lead them down the middle, just prancing to the fiddle, never thought of going home till break of day. No, there ain't much chance of sleeping when them memories come to grief. Sometimes you think you hear the voices call. And the fellow starts to drag him to the home ranch with the wagon when they finish shipping cattle in the fall. While I was out riding, the graveyard shifted night till dawn. The moon was as bright as a moonlight She asked me, why do you write for your money? Tell me why you grow short, baby. You ain't getting nowhere, and you lose and you share. Must have gone crazy out there. He said the last time I run on me, she's married, has a good life. Sure messed the track when you never think that she's the perfect professional's wife. She asked me, why does he write for his money? Tell me, why does he grow short, baby? He didn't know it, and she said he should. Must have gone crazy out there. But they never seen the northern lights, and they never seen a hawk on the wing. Never seen a scream in the great divide, and never heard old Canterbury sing. I read up the last of my letter, tore off the stamp for black gin. Billy rode up to meet me. He just looked at my letter and grinned. He asked me, why do we ride for our money? Tell me, why do we roll short, baby? We ain't getting nowhere, and we're losing our share. Well, they all must be crazy out there, 'cause they've never seen the northern lights, and they've never seen a hawk on the wing. Never seen a scream in the great divide, and never heard old Canterbury sing. Oh, lady, oh, lady, oh, lady, oh, lady, Well, it's probably been a long day for some of y'all driving, and the riding tonight. It'll be a long day tomorrow. But I want to leave you with one thing tonight before you go. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, or who are tired and run down and burdened, and I'll give you rest." Sometimes we need physical rest, but sometimes we need spiritual rest. We just need time away. Some of y'all, I heard you say, I just needed a little time away. I just need a minute. I'm reminded of a scene in the movie The American Sniper. And what's his name? I just lost his name in my mind. Chris Cobb came back, and he actually had been home a couple of days, but he had not gone home to his wife and kids yet. And when found that out, she just couldn't believe that he got home from being overseas, but he didn't come home. He hung away from home for a while. And choking down the tears and the anguish in him, he said, I just needed a minute. He needed a minute before he went to them to decompress from what he had seen and what he had been involved in. Sometimes life gets that way, doesn't it? We just need a minute, you know. Just give me a minute, you know. Let me just for a second. I hope this weekend is a minute for you. I hope this weekend you get to take a minute. Because Jesus said, take upon yourself my yoke and my burden. Because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus wants to trade out with you. He wants to take all the stuff, all of the baggage, and all of the stuff that weighs you down. He wants to take it away from you and let you just surrender to Him and let Him have it. That's rest. If you take what's going on in your life for the rest in Jesus Christ, that's a good trade. That is always a good trade. All alone on a hillside, man sits on his horse, reins his hand. The story of his life is in the lines on his face. He steps up his pony and he rides on down to a little white church on the edge of town. He kneels and prays as they sing Amazing Grace. For rest, for his weary soul rest, to cleanse and make him whole rest from the storms and trials of his life, his hard life. Rest, heaven's calm comes down, rest. He can hear the sound like a wild wind, bringing peace and rest. She's held him all night, he's heard the wind, stroking his cheek and holding his hand. His fever's breaking just at breaking of day. While the sun's coming up, she puts her baby down. Her soft voice is the oldest sound. Her husband hears as she kneels and quietly prays for rest, for her weary soul rest. Make her baby whole rest from the storms and trials of her life and his little life. Rest, heaven's calm comes down, rest. She can hear the sound like a band of angels, bringing peace and rest. He sits by the bedside, face in his hands. She is his lady, he is her man. He sees the love of his life, and she slid away. He knows she won't be here very much longer while she's getting weak. He's got to be strong. He kneels beside her bed, and he cries as he prays. Rest, for her weary soul rest, to cleanse and make her whole rest from the storms and trials of her life, her long life. Rest, heaven's calm comes down, rest. He can hear the sound like 1,000 angels, bringing peace and rest. prayers of the righteous are heard by Jesus, each and every sound. He whispers them softly in the ear of his Father, who sends his mercy down. With rest for our weary souls, rest, cleanse and make us whole. Rest from the storms and trials of our lives, each and every life. Rest, heaven's balm comes down. Rest, we can hear the sound like a choir of angels, bringing peace and rest. Oh, like a band of angels, bringing peace and rest. Oh, like 1,000 angels, bringing peace and rest.